Hey folks, Deb from Queerstrology here. I know that Swifty World has been insane the last few days. I did the playlist for every sign, so I hope you all enjoyed that. Make sure you check that out. But I've had numerous requests to actually talk about Taylor Swift's chart, if you will, and break it down for you all so we can have a better understanding of Miss Swift, if you will. So here above me, right here, is Taylor's chart. Now I don't have the aspects on, but I will explain to you what we're looking at here. Some of you may feel more comfortable seeing her chart written out, like more like this, if you will. Let me show you. You know, you might be used to seeing it something like that. Okay, but the thing is that with this chart, this is the same thing, okay? So I'm going to show you and tell you what we're looking at here, and then we'll even go over her aspects a little bit, which are the lines that you usually see going across here. But first, let me break it down as to what we're actually even looking at here, okay? Now, this is Taylor Swift's natal chart, and a natal chart is a snapshot of the sky at the moment that you were born. Okay, that's why we need to know the location and the time, because when we know the location and the time, we can then get a better idea of what the snapshot is. Because out here on the outside edge, you'll see all 12 of the signs. Well, these are the constellations. Okay, they're constantly moving. They go along the ecliptic, and they represent each of these 12 represents a 30-day period that we have a season, if you will. Okay, and each of them are pretty much about the attitudes that we think when we look up our horoscope or things like that. We're talking about the signs and the constellations. Okay, so these constellations are up there in the sky. They represent a time frame. All right, now when we look at this, it changes every 2 hours because there's 24 hours in a day and there's 12 signs. So while we read these charts counterclockwise, okay, the constellations on the outside edge are actually slowly moving like this. And they move 30 degrees every 2 hours. So we take that snapshot at the moment that the person was born, okay? Like in Taylor's case, that was 5:17 a.m. And those that are born right before 6 a.m. and so are usually the rising sign just before their sun sign, as you can see here, okay? So Taylor was born when Scorpio, the constellation of Scorpio, was on the eastern horizon at 5:17 in the morning. Okay, so that's why she is a Scorpio rising. That's what that indicates, all right? Now, when you look at that, you can see it's ASC right here. That stands for ascendant or rising sign. Every single person, if you know your location and your time, you will have an ASC and it will always be located right here, okay? Now, I use Western style, Placidius, tropical, whatever you may want to call it, okay? Now, this is what's interesting about this is I'm going to break down each of these sections, right? So we can kind of understand, and it'll help you even read your chart. Now, I do astrology readings, not just for celebrities or reality stars or stuff like that, but for y'all as well. There's a link in my profile. It goes to my link tree. There's several services. If you just want to find your match or you want an actual reading, and I walk you through just like this, make sure you go check that out, all right? That being said, let's get back to the chart. Now, everybody's chart, you always started, sorry about that. Am I okay now? I'm not muted anymore. I hope, that it's fixed there. Is it fixed? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so everybody, every single person's round chart that you see, that's an astrology chart or a natal chart, a birth chart, okay? It is right here, we start at ASC, and it is always on the cusp of your first house, because not only is it the Eastern Horizon constellations rising, which makes you your rising sign, right? It is also the ruler of your entire chart. Now, a lot of people think that their sun sign is the ruler of their chart. This is what the sun sign is represented by this glyph right here, okay? So really, it's what your rising sign is. So for Taylor, she's actually ruled by the planet of Pluto. And Pluto is about transformation. Now, what's interesting is, if you look at this chart right here, I do not have several things that you may be used to seeing on these charts that are on at the moment to make it a little bit easier for us to see. One of those things is the 3 generational planets. Okay. Now, Taylor has Uranus, which is one of the generational planets, and generational planets stay in a sign for 8 or more years. Okay. So I didn't bother putting them on here because anybody who's within that same age range as Taylor will have the same placement. Okay. The difference is it won't necessarily be in the same house because everybody has a different rising sign, right? So for Taylor, as an example, the 3 generational planets, 2 of them are in Capricorn, Uranus and Neptune. Okay, so she does have a Capricorn stellium in her chart, but she also has a Capricorn or a second house stellium that we can talk about in a second. Okay, that being, a stellium is 3 or more points in the same house or the same sign, and I will explain that more as we go around. Her Pluto is under Scorpio, okay, and it's in the 12th house, even though I don't have it up here, just so we know. Okay. Now the other things I don't have on are her north node, south node, her lunar nodes, which of course north node is destiny and south node is your past. Taylor's north node is in Aquarius right here, and we can talk about that when we get around. And then I also don't have Chiron, which is childhood wounds or what we're healing. Okay. It's in the second, her Capricorn stellium is in the second house. Okay. It's not even spread across houses. It's all in the second. And then as well, because in actuality, Capricorn doesn't rule any houses. So I'll explain in a moment. But her Chiron, which is your childhood wounds or things that you want to heal over time, hers happens to be up in Cancer in the 8th house. So we'll kind of touch on those a little bit if we want to and if we have time. But instead, I like to concentrate on the biggest ones, the largest planets that are the closest to us, that move more quickly. The fastest one, the slowest one on this is Saturn, being that it takes 2.5 years to move through a sign. Okay, so sorry, that's not Saturn, that's Jupiter. This is Saturn right here. Okay, so now let me finish explaining the other things that are on here, okay? We know the signs, their personalities, and we'll touch on them as we go around. But as I was saying, that everybody starts right here, and then you'll notice right below it, there's a 1, and then there's a 2, and a 3, and it goes counterclockwise. It goes all the way to 12. These numbers are representing the houses, okay? The houses are part of your life. They represent a certain area of your life, if you will, okay? And you can see that they each have their own piece of pie. So the first house's piece of pie is here. The second house piece of pie is here, and so on. Now, what's interesting is the signs are always 30 degrees, okay? But the houses are not always 30 degrees. They can vary. I've seen some as big as 87 degrees, I think, and some as small as 11 degrees, okay? And even 9, I think. I saw one once. So hers are fairly even, but you will notice that there are a couple of signs, mainly Capricorn and Cancer, that don't rule any houses. That doesn't mean they're not in her chart. They are. But let me explain what that means in a minute here, okay? The third element that I want to talk about that's on this screen right now are these glyphs, right? We see these glyphs, and some, you may know what some of them mean, and some of them you're like, oh, I have to look it up, right? I'm going to explain what each of them are, but what they represent is a kind of focus, okay? So you have the personality of the signs, all right? You have the part of your life something's happening in, and then if there's a particular focus that's brought in with a certain personality to a certain part of your life, okay? So all of that stuff being said, let's talk about Taylor's chart, all right? We're literally going to read it, how I would read her chart if I was giving her an astrological reading, okay? So here we are again. I'm going to go back here to the first house. Again, Taylor's ruled by Pluto. Scorpio, what are the highlights or the things that we think about with Scorpio? They tend to be very intense. They're sensual people. But when you have a rising sign in Scorpio, you tend to come off as being very intimidating and hard to approach, because the first house and the ruler of the first house, which happens to be Scorpio, that represents the kind of energy that people get from you when they first meet you, and also how you approach things, like the attitude that you have when you're approaching something new. So when people first meet Taylor, they might feel like she's a little bit Scorpio, a little sensual and kind of intimidating, right? That being said, let's look at what's right here, okay? Because the first house is represented, and it's called the house of self, which means it represents your new growth, your understanding of the world, right? And so for her, she's going to be an emotional investigator, because Scorpio is the emotional investigator. And that's what's going to drive herself. She wants to learn how to be more successful as she tends to transform towards it. Okay. That being said, we can see right here, this right here, folks, is Mars. It represents the planet of Mars. Now, at Queerstrology, Mars we call top energy, or what you want to be in control of, okay? It is your drive. It's what's driving you in general. And here in the first house, it's actually in one of its elements in a way, because Mars represents Aries, okay? And Aries is the native ruler of the first house of self, the urgency, the childlikeness, the fun, if you will. So having the Mars there, but under the sign of Scorpio, means that she's very driven to emotionally investigate items of herself. How is she reacting? What is her emotional attachment to herself, as well as other people and the things that she comes across? How is she relating to them? She's very driven, and she wants to be in control of her emotional access to herself, okay? She doesn't want other people to just have whatever kind of emotional access. She's very driven to give that out, as we see when she writes her songs and she's singing. She's giving a lot of herself within that, okay? So that being said, let's look at, sorry, I'm not, please don't ask to be on the live at the moment. I'm not taking other folks' live jump ons, unless it would happen to be Taylor. If Taylor comes in, we can have her jump on. But other than that, not right now, okay? If you do want a reading from me, or you have questions about astrology, please check the link in my profile. You can book a reading with me, okay? So check that out. It's my link tree. Now let's talk about the fact that Sagittarius, her sun sign, but also that it's taking up a big part of the first house. It's not the ruler of it, Scorpio is, okay? But Sagittarius takes up a large part of the first house of self. Sagittarius's energy is about is about experience and adventure, philosophy, spirituality, wanting to absorb information. So again, she's going to have the craving of trying to gain more information. Okay. Now, when we talk about sun and what the sun brings, what focus it brings, it's about ego. Okay. So your ego is what you have in your confidence and your understanding. She's probably inherently lucky, okay? Because having a sun in Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion. So it's always looking to expand and create this world where they can find new things and experience new things directly, not just read about it, but actually experience it, okay? Now, this is something that's interesting, what a lot of people ask. So I say that Scorpio is ruling the first house, Sagittarius is in it. How do you know what sign is ruling which house? How do you know that, right? Well, I'm about to show you, because as I said, they have each of a piece of pie, right? You can see their pieces of pie. Well, the lead line, or the first line of that house going counterclockwise, whichever sign it hits rules that house. So specifically, let's look. We go, here's the second house right here. The lead line's here. We follow it. Sagittarius rules the second house of value and possession. Okay. I can do yours, but you have to go to the link in my profile. Okay. And we'll go through all this. You get a 7-page PDF where I break it down, and then I walk you through it just like this on video chat. Okay. So right here, you can see that Sagittarius rules the second house. All right. The second house is, again, about security and value, the things that you want to gain and possess. Okay. That being said, having Sagittarius rule that means, again, she's going to use her experience and her adventures of things, her expansion of what she's learned in the world, her philosophies, all of that. And she is going to concentrate on those things bringing value. Okay. Now, What's interesting is here is Capricorn. And as you can see, Capricorn has 2 placements here, and there's a 3rd placement, but in Aquarius, okay? So with these 3 right here, this already has a stellium in the 2nd house. Now again, a stellium is 3 or more placements in a single sign or a single house. So in this case, she actually, because I don't have those generational planets on, she does have Uranus and Neptune here. They're both also in Capricorn. So technically speaking, she has a 2nd house stellium because it's split between 2 signs, meaning Capricorn and Aquarius. Okay, but she does also have a Capricorn stellium. Stelliums bring a enhanced focus. If it's the sign, it's an enhanced focus of what that sign's attitude is. In Capricorn's case, it's about efficiency and effectiveness when it comes to structure. Okay, and if it's Sagittarius, it would be the experience of it, right? Now, if it's the house, and in this case, 2nd house, they're going to have an extreme focus on things that gain value and things that they want or think that have value and make them feel more secure and safe. All right. So that being said, let's look at the placements and talk about them. Okay. The first one here, this is Mercury. Okay. Is the $33 one that you do on TikTok Live? No. This is Swifty Astronomy. Yeah, this is Taylor Swift's chart. The $33 one, I don't know if I have a $33 one. My astrology readings are 100 bones, but you can split them up there's a PDF that you can get first for 60 and then do the $40 video reading when you want to. Also, all my stuff is booked through PayPal, and they do have a payment plan where you can split anything that you purchase into 4 separate payments, if that helps. Okay. There are a bunch of different kinds up there, so make sure you check. But if you're looking for the astrology or the natal chart reading, that's similar to what I'm doing right here. Okay. So that's the one that's the same. Okay. So back to the placements here. First, we have Mercury. Okay. Now Mercury kind of looks similar to the sign of Venus, which is right here, but it has the little horns on the top. Okay. The little wings, if you will. Now Mercury is the representation of communication and how you like to communicate. So if it's under the sign of Capricorn, your communication is going to tend to want to be very exacting, very efficient, very, this could have been an email instead of a meeting, because wanting to get things done quickly and to the point. And she's going to have high value in that. She thinks that her communication time is money, and she's not wrong. Okay. Now, on top of that, we have the planet of Saturn. Now, a lot of people hear about Saturn and they're like, oh no, Saturn return. And for those of you that have Saturn in Pisces, you are currently going through your Saturn return. Good luck. You can do this. Okay. It's just about refining your life and figuring out what's really important to you. Okay. Now, where I see Saturn in somebody's natal chart, okay, it indicates an area where they may be doing too much of something and they need to be slightly restricted to get the results they want. Because you see, Saturn is the planet of restriction, but also results. And because it's in its native Capricorn here, meaning Saturn is the ruling planet of Capricorn, it tends to make somebody very efficient and effective with what they want their results to be. Okay? The thing is, why is it here for her? It could be that she's concentrating and valuing work over other things that also have value, and she would like to have possession of personal things, more emotional things. Okay. She has a lot of water, so she's not going to be without that temptation of having some emotion involved. But it could be she tries to block that out sometimes and just try to concentrate on the efficient and effective ways to do things. And that's why Saturn's there. It's trying to restrict her just being efficient with work and also considering emotional aspects in order to get the results she's looking for. Okay. So then let's look at the third placement that is here, but it happens to be in the sign of Aquarius. It's only 1 degree in, okay? And that is Venus, okay? Amber asks, how were you able to find her birth time? It is guessed on several astrology sites that I have looked at. I have not gotten it directly from her as 5:17 a.m. according to multiple astrology sites. So because it is publicly available, that's why I don't mind sharing it. Otherwise, I wouldn't tell you what the birth time was. But yeah, that's how you I know is, and it's not necessarily 100% accurate. She may not have been born at 517, and if she wasn't, it would really realign a lot of things. But when I'm reading this, I feel like it's pretty accurate. But you all can let me know what you think. All right. What's my zodiac sign? I am a Capricorn Sun and a Sagittarius rising and moon. Yeah. I know, interesting, right? So, okay, so here, right here, like I was saying, this is Venus. It's still in the second house, okay? You can see it just a little bit right there, and it's still in the second house, but it's in Aquarius, okay? Now, Aquarians, you may know they're a bit of the alien of the zodiac sign. They don't like to do things typically. They don't like to say, oh, society wants me to do it like this, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay? Aquarians are opposite of that. They're very altruistic or humanitarian in their thoughts. Okay? So her Venus, or surrendering energy, what she needs in order to feel like she can be vulnerable in a situation, is somebody who has like unique and different kinds of styles of ideas. And that brings value to her ideas, okay? Because she's like, oh, this person looks at it totally different than me. And that is extremely valuable to me, okay? So in that case, that's why this is here. But also she can feel as though she can surrender to somebody who's a little different than she is, who brings something to the table, whether it's a work relationship, any kind of connection that she has, she's going to be able to feel more comfortable and vulnerable around people that think outside of the box. Okay. Now, when we think about it, that also indicates when we follow the lead line for the third house, Aquarius rules her third house of communication. Okay. So while your focus of communication in Taylor's case is about their focus of communication is about efficiency, how they think about communicating and how they actually communicate their thoughts on it and what they want to say is based in the third house. Okay. So again, we're talking about uniqueness. She doesn't want how she communicates to be typical. She wants it to be interesting and probably telling a story a bit, if you will. Okay. So that being said, if we look here, we can go to the fourth house, and you can see the fourth house right here. It's ruled by Pisces. Okay. So if Pisces rules the fourth house, what does that mean? Well, Pisces is the oldest and wisest of the zodiac signs. Okay. Which means its intuition and dreaminess wants to rule over Taylor's home life, her domestic life. Now, home life does not have to be a physical home. It just happens to be maybe this favorite place you enjoy, where you personally feel at home. So wherever that might be for Taylor, if it's Pennsylvania or one of her other homes or any of that, fine. But she wants to be intuitively connected. And anybody who is in this space with her, she wants to be able to communicate with them without having to say anything. She wants them to kind of be on the same page. She wants them to know what she's thinking, or at least have an idea and be able to act accordingly, because that's the Pisces energy. They're like, I want to be able to communicate with you without having to directly communicate with you. And so that's what she's looking for at home. She's looking for that interesting connection to where she's staying and just feeling like she's supposed to be there, and that anybody else who's there feels like they're also supposed to be there. Okay. Now let's go over here to the fifth house, and we follow that lead line down, and look, it's Aries. So Aries is the youngest of the zodiac signs. It's the most urgent, right? That being said, what does that mean? Well, having an urgent fifth house, the fifth house is your creativity. Okay, it's pleasure. So under the sign of Aries ruling it, it indicates that she's very quick in her different creative ideas. She can probably come up with a lot of different ones. And honestly, can't we say that like it has to do with like what was I just saying there? Well, I lost it for a second. She has a lot, like, look, as an example, she was going to come out, I think, with an Eras tour like 2019, right before the pandemic came, right? And instead of doing that, the pandemic happened and we got 3 other albums. So, because her ideas are constantly coming. And honestly, I bet you there are hundreds of songs that we have never even heard, because this Aries and this creativity and pleasure, she probably just writes constantly and just gets to pick the best ones. And some of them she may not necessarily be picking correctly. We may love them. We'd probably love all of them, but she gets to have the kind of ability to have a lot of different ideas to choose from. Kind of a shotgun approach to being more accepted in the world. And has she not? I mean, holy cow, right? Doesn't mean anything when a house has no placements. No, it just means like, because there are actually thousands, somebody just asked if it means anything when there's not anything in here. You have a ruler, like I was saying, Pisces rules 4th house, Aries rules 5th house. So that gives you the energy for that part of your life. And to be frank with you, there are thousands and thousands of these astral bodies. Okay. We're just talking about a few of them. And in fact, I've even limited it down even more right now. So I'm just saying that like, it's like, it doesn't matter. It just is an extra focus. Does that make sense? So like how I'm talking about right now, how she is creatively, if she had a thing there, it would say, okay, well, she also concentrates on being vulnerable within that writing, things like that, if that makes sense. Okay, cool. And Heather said, spot on. She has hundreds of unreleased songs. I bet. I have no doubt. Because of that, because of this right here, honestly. So being really creative and having Aries there is kind of like, woo, and you get to be like, ooh, that wasn't a good one, but at least I tried it. Right. So she kind of has that freedom to do that. Now let's look at Taurus right here. And I'm going to point out something, before I read the house. But as you can see, the lead line for the 6th house hits Taurus, but so does the lead line for the 7th house. So what does that mean? It means Taurus rules both houses. So Taurus rules the 6th house of your acts of routine, acts of service, if you will, your daily routines. Okay. So having that in Taurus indicates that it's slow and steady. What needs to get done is going to get done. Okay. And somebody just asked, what's the 12th house ruler here? Scorpio. Should we consider whole house system? Yes, Scorpio is the 12th house ruler. You can see right here. Whole house system is more Eastern style. And since Taylor was born in the United States and in Philadelphia, or in Pennsylvania, sorry, not in Philadelphia. She was born in Reading, I think, or something like that, West Reading. Because she was born here in the United States, Western style will probably tend to resonate more closely. But sometimes, folks, you will find that you will resonate with whole sign, which is another housing system. Okay. And that one tends to have all the houses lined up with the signs. So it's like Pisces, 4th house, Aries, 5th, and so on. Whereas in this case, the house or the signs are all 30 degrees and the houses can vary. As they do, because this is a sphere that we're looking at right now. Okay, and you have the signs going along the ecliptic. That's what these are. Okay, and then you have another point that's going across that shows you the different houses and how they blend together. So we just flatten it down to make it easier for us to read. So I hope that helps. All right. Okay, so now the 6th house ruled by Taurus for acts of service and how your daily routines work. You like structure. And you will get done whatever needs to get done because Taurus has that ability, right? And they're kind of like slow, steady. Does it look good? Because they are still also ruled by Venus, just like Libra. So they are about the aesthetic, but also structural aesthetic. Okay. You're very welcome. So what that kind of indicates is that this person is going to do what they need to get done, but then they better have their rest and their snacks afterward ready for them to go. That's kind of the energy that they're going to bring to that. They're great at establishing and getting things done. They're very reliable in getting things done, even if it might take a minute. They will get it done eventually. Okay. Now that being said, Taurus also rules her 7th house of relationships. Okay. So if Taurus is ruling the 7th house of relationships, let's talk more about Taurus's attitude and what they're going to bring to the different kinds of connections, because your 7th house just isn't just romantic connections. It's all kinds of relationships, families, friends, more long-term style. Okay. Contractually speaking, co-workers, the whole nine. And so when it comes to that, for Taylor, it has to do with having security, having high value. So she's looking for a very high value relationship or connections that feel secure and like they have some sort of structure and understanding to them. They have a base to them that'll feel important for her. So that's why you can see even in some of her writing how when she's hurt or she gets her feelings hurt, it's about feeling as though she is not valued enough by the other person. And that makes sense because Taurus rules her seventh house. Okay. Now, that being said, Gemini is also in a big part of that seventh house, which means that she is going to have some duality when it comes to her relationships. She may be a little hot and cold. Okay. She wants to be valued. She'll value them, but she also doesn't want it to be boring. Okay. Because Gemini energy in that seventh house can be very boring. I will also say that having an air sign around in or an air sign placement within the seventh house usually indicates somebody has not a typical cis hetero relationship with everything. Okay. There's some sort of difference in there because the air sign flexibility comes into play, especially when it's a mutable, which is one of the three modes of the signs in astrology. Mutable is the last mode of the three, and it is about finishing things up, tying things up. And so when Gemini is coming into play here, it's saying like, hey, what are we doing here? Are we having fun? Because I don't like the story that we're creating. I want a good story to talk about. So that's some of the energy that she'll bring in as well. And it also indicates storytelling about relationships, which we know she does as well. Now, if we look at the lead line for the eighth house, it hits Gemini. Okay. So that means that Gemini is ruling her eighth house. Okay. The eighth house is that of pleasure and, not pleasure, sorry, transformation, segs, death, transformation, rebirth is what I'm trying to get at. Okay. So a rebirth. And so she has a really interesting story about it. She has a story about how she's rebirthed herself. She doesn't have any problems actually communicating that fact because Gemini is ruling her eighth house. Now she has two placements here. Okay. And so these two placements are the moon, which represent the focus of your emotions, and also Jupiter, the focus of how you expand as a person. But both of these happen to be under the sign of Cancer. Now, what's interesting is before we talked about Capricorn and how Capricorn doesn't rule any houses, but does have a stellium in it. There's two planets that aren't on right here. So there's 4 signs in Capricorn. Well, what's interesting up here, Cancer also does not rule any houses. You can see Leo rules the 9th. So in this 8th house is Cancer, and there's the moon and Jupiter. And honestly, folks, also Chiron is here. Now, Chiron is your childhood wounds and things that you're trying to heal in this life. So I'm going to touch on that slightly when we get up to it. Let's talk about the moon and Jupiter first, okay? These signs are in Cancer. All right. The first one, the moon, is actually the ruling luminary. It's not a planet. Okay. But it's the ruler of Cancer. Okay. So that being said, that means that she's going to have a really deep emotional capacity through her transformations, through her rebirth. All right. Because it is in this 8th house. On top of that, with Jupiter here, the more her emotional capacity increases, the more she expands as a person and the more she can transform as a person. And the more she transforms as a person, the more songs we get, the more meaningful lyrics we get. Okay. The more touching part. Like how many of you have like been in your car and listened to a certain Taylor song? You're like, I'm not listening to this. It's going to make me cry. But then you couldn't help yourself because you needed to feel that emotion, and she plucks that string, right? And so those things indicate that. Now, in addition to that, like I said, her Chiron is also here and in Cancer. And Chiron in Cancer is one of the most common placements, that and Gemini, okay? There's only a few signs that it's usually in because Chiron takes a long time to move, okay? That being said, having Chiron in Cancer in the 8th house indicates that She's experienced a lot of great loss in her life. Now, so a lot of times people associate that with like human, like losing people, and that could be, but it's also other things that have some sort of emotional attachment to them that she has lost a lot of. And because of that, she feels guilty that she's lost those things because she's underperformed in some way. That's what that wound will tell her. Now, on the flip side of that, and the healing part of that, is that she's very good at making people who feel ordinary feel extraordinary. Okay? Ooh, Heather, her masters, she lost them. You're not wrong. And she is definitely gaining them back, isn't she? So how is she gaining them back? And how is she doing that? She's learning to figure out that she's also extraordinary and helping herself feel like she doesn't have to be ordinary and put up with that. She can be extraordinary. Okay? So that being said, that is how she's working on getting all of those masters back. That's amazing. Thank you, Heather. That was a great call too for that. Dolly says, if crying in the club was a person. Yes, if crying in the club was a person, it would be this. And Chiron in Cancer. You are correct. That's funny. So let's talk about what rules the 9th house here. Okay. So you can see on this line, we go up, it hits Leo. So Leo, the sign, another fire sign. Okay. But it likes adoration. And I don't just mean for like, hey, you look amazing, or you're looking wonderful. Well, that's great. Okay. They want to be noticed for things that they have done. And in this case, it is the house of experience, philosophy, adventure, travel, all of that. So she's looking for adoration through these experiences. She's seeking how to gain adoration from other people by obtaining different experiences and philosophies and educating herself. And she's going to use that to gain adoration. Hello? Does she not? She does, because what she's writing to us is her songs from her experiences and the things that she's gone through literally herself. And she is gaining adoration or some sort of creativity and pleasure from being able to get that out into the world. Okay? Now, what's interesting here is that most Scorpio risings are Leo MCs, which usually indicates a fame thing, right? However, in this case, she actually is a Virgo MC, which is usually most Sagittarius risings have a Virgo MC. Now, what is MC? MC stands for medium coli. What's that? It's Latin for top of the sky, okay? So remember how I was telling you this is a sphere? Well, this is the top point of that sphere. It's the highest point, okay? Therefore, it's your point of achievement. We also call it your midhaven, okay? Now, this indicates your ambition, your career aspects, your achievements, things like that, okay? So for Taylor, instead of it being actually wrapped up in that adoration, it's in the structural details. It's making lists of things, making sure things are done and the details are taken care of, because Virgo is the detail-oriented sign of structure, okay? They're the perfectionists and they want to make sure that everything that's on the list gets checked off. So coming from a place of emotional intensity where people see that, and that's who they first see, and then on top of that being very detail oriented when it comes to her achievements, very interesting combination. Kind of playful in a way, or can be, but also very intimidating. So only a few people will know about these things, okay? It's only the people that she will let closer into her circle, which get to know what she's planning with any of this stuff. Okay. Now, when we happen to follow the 11th house, okay, and we go up here, the 11th house, Libra rules the 11th house. Huh? What does that mean? Libra is all about finding balance and justice. And the 11th house is your house of social interactions, the kind of social groups you want to be a part of, the kind of social group, or like kind of your role within the social group. And for her, she's just looking to be fair and friendly and wants to make sure she's heard the whole story before she makes any decisions. And I honestly, I don't know too much about her social life in general, so I don't know if she's like that or not. The only thing I really know is like, I know she's good friends with lots of different performers and that she does promote other people. It also indicates that she has probably shared her success with other people in other ways, either by writing things for them or performing background or using her position to help bump them up as well. That's what that Libra indication can be there. Now we also have Scorpio that is ruling the 12th house of intuition and dreams. All right. Now, remember I was telling you earlier that I don't have the generational planets on, but if I did, Pluto, which is one of those generational planets, it takes 15 to 30 years to go through an individual sign. Okay. So anybody who's within the same age range as Taylor will also have their Pluto in Scorpio. The differences are which house it's in. So in her generation, they're looking for intense transformation. That's her generation's goal. Her particular individual role, the team that she's on for her generation, is the one that's using their intuition and their dreams to make this transformation happen. Okay? Because that's why Scorpio is ruling it. And on top of that, you know, it happens to also be her rising sign, which goes back into the first house. Okay? Now, folks, this is just her chart. There are something on here that may be missing that you're like, hey, aren't there usually lines or something on here? Or can there be? Yes. And those lines, those are called aspects. Okay? These are Taylor's aspects. Now, let me explain something that's very interesting. There are 5 major aspects that we talk about in astrology. Now, Taylor has 4, but not all 5 in her natal chart. I could get the 5th one to come on when I turned on Pluto and the North Node. The North Node, which is here in Capricorn, I believe. No, Aquarius. Is it in Aquarius? Hold on, let me double check. No, it's in Capricorn. So having your North Node, like I said, North Nodes are your destiny. And so her destiny, her North Node is right here, which means her South Node will be exactly 180 degrees right here in Cancer. Okay? So her destiny is about achievement. And then her Cancer South Node was emotions. So what she's learned from her past, what she's built upon is having this in-depth emotional capacity. So now in this time frame, she's going to take those emotions and use that energy into achieving and finding value in things that she needs to find value in, specifically structure, whether it's songwriting or whatever it happens to be. Okay? Oh, interesting. So, Casey, you said your North Node is in Cap and your South Node is in Cancer. It looks very similar to this, but your Sun is in Leo. So maybe you were born within the same year, but even then it'd be pretty interesting because then your rising sign would have to be similar. So even though you'd be born on a Scorpio here, right? But that your Sun would be, where's Leo? Right here? Where is it? Up here. Your Sun would be up here in the ninth house. So yeah, that could be very similar. But yeah, I do readings. So if you're interested in any of that, folks, by the way, let me talk about that before I talk about these aspects really quick. If you go to my page at the top, there's a link that you can click on. It's my link tree and it has links to Find Your Match, which is this thing where it's only $20. And once you send out that email or once you purchase it, you can email back with 5 multiple choice questions. Then I send you back after you've answered those, your perfect astrological match, including the days that they were born. You get three of those matches, okay, with their dates. There's also natal chart readings similar to what I'm doing right here. And in that case, it's a 7-page PDF that you get from me first, where I break down this chart for you, your natal chart, bit by bit. Okay. And then we can do a video reading where I walk you through every single part of it and explain it to you. You can ask me questions, the whole thing. That's $100 for that, but you can split it into doing just a PDF at first for $60, and then you will get a discounted reading for $40 when you're ready to book that. I also do synastry readings, which is compatibility. Those are much more expensive, but there's several options for those. Just make sure there's secondary readings, like maybe you know a lot about your primary, but you want to know about your nodes and your asteroids and stuff. I have those as well. So make sure you check that out. Thank you so much. Somebody just said the readings are fantastic. I really appreciate that. That's so nice of you. This is endlessly fascinating. I wish I could stay. Thank you so much for sharing. Hey, Heather, thank you for your input. It's been quite helpful. So have a good rest of your day, okay? Okay, so let's talk about the aspects, like I was saying, folks. I got caught up in the nodes. So see, your opposite, your north node is in Cancer. So that means in the past, your south node is in Capricorn then. So in your past, you were very about achievements. And now you're looking more into emotional connection. So interesting, huh? Okay, so aspects. Let's first talk about the first one, which is conjunction. Okay, like I said, there's 5 major ones. The first one is conjunction. Conjunction means when placements are within 10 degrees of each other. Okay, so you can see she has 3 different conjunctions. She's got this one right here, where her ascendant and Mars are in conjunction to each other, and the energy is blended. Okay, you can see these might be, I'd have to double check, and these probably are as well. So what happens is that their energy becomes blended. So then you would say to yourself, oh, how her first impression and her drive are blended together. How she communicates and her results are blended together. How she expands and her emotions are blended together. And obviously there's more in it because you want to talk about the personality that's brought into it. Okay. So, and the part of your life that it's affecting. But that's why these aspects, that's why we talk about them, because it shows us the relationship between your different focus points. Okay. So now let's talk about something called sextile. Okay. So sextile is the purple lines. Now, folks, this is astrocharts.com, which you can also click to get your free natal chart from them as well. That's also in my bio. But all the astrology sites, if they do have colored lines for their aspects, they will be the same colors as these. So, I mean, conjunction doesn't have a color because there's no line needed because they're right next to each other. But sextile is purple, okay? And it is 60 degrees. And sextile represents cooperation, okay? So like we would read this as her Mars, so her drive, Taylor's drive, is cooperating. Okay, her emotional investigative drive of herself is cooperating with that unique value that she wants to surrender to. Okay, so that's what that indicates. Now, the third major aspect that we normally talk about, again, I said I could get one up if I had her Pluto and her North Node on, because they end up being square to each other. Okay, square is 90 degrees and it's usually represented by a red line, and it indicates conflict. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, folks, because sometimes conflicts create action that's needed. Okay, and so they could just be a speed bump, but it'll help you be a better person overall. All right. Now, that being said, let's go to the next one, which is trine. Trine is 120 degrees and it's represented by a green line. Okay. You may have also heard the term grand trine. That is something we call a pattern. That's when you have 3 or more aspects involved, then it becomes a pattern, just like a stellium, which is a pattern for a conjunction. Does that make sense? Conjunction is within 10 degrees. Stellium is within the same house or the same sign. So those are patterns, or what we call patterns. Okay. Now, trine, they are usually within the same element, which is the case here, earth and earth. Okay. So they have the same baseline. There are 4 elements in astrology: fire, which is energy, earth is structure, air is intelligence, and water is emotion. Okay, so those 4, they have that baseline. So in this case, they both have a structural baseline. The difference is there are 3 modes. So while all 4 of those elements have 3 modes to them, meaning there's 4 fire signs, there's 4 earth signs. I'm sorry, there's 3. There's 3 earth signs, 3 water signs, and so on, right? And so each of those signs has a different mode. Cardinal, which is Capricorn in this case, is the cardinal earth sign. They are the initiators. They start the seasons. Capricorn starts winter. Aries starts spring. Cancer starts summer. And Libra starts fall. Those are the cardinal signs, okay? The next one, that is, oh my gosh, I just blanked out for a second. Fixed. Here I am, I'm back. So the next mode is fixed, okay? So for Earth, that would actually be Taurus. Taurus is the fixed earth sign or fixed structure. And these folks, they take the systems initiated by the cardinal signs, they adjust them and prepare them to give to the mutable signs, the bow tires, okay? So that's why you have those three modes. They give you the different kind of energy behind each of the elements, all right? That being said, what it means here is her MC, so her Virgo MC, her detailed achievements are in a really good flow. That's what we call it, the flow, right? It's in a really good flow here with how her efficient and how much she values her efficient communication, which kind of makes sense, right? Efficient communication with a checklist for achievements, probably pretty good. Now, the last one of the 5 major is called opposition. And Taylor has a lot of oppositions. And what I love about oppositions, they're the blue line here and they're 180 degrees. So they are straight across from each other. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that their energy is push and pull. So it is actually taking the energy from, like, as an example, here's Mercury again. So that valued, efficient communication is pushing and pulling with the emotional, the deep emotional, transformative expansion that she's having. And they're having a back and forth. But you'll see, like, she'll efficiently communicate, and that will help her emotions be like, okay, now I have more room to be emotionally involved in this. And then vice versa, where the emotions can happen, and then the communication will be like, how can we efficiently communicate how we are feeling? And they will feed off each other and grow from each other. So that's just, how those work anyway. Now, that all being said, folks, let me just put this back up here because most people would rather just see like this. So yeah, that's her birth chart. That's Taylor's birth chart, and how we read the round birth chart, if you will. Now, folks, there's other kinds of astrology charts that we can read. There are things called transit charts, which I am a birth chart reader. That's what I like to concentrate on. I do understand some of the other ones, but it's not my point of specialty. I am not a person that can necessarily predict something for you, but I can help you figure out what you are into and what your chart is saying about who you are. Okay? Nothing is ever written in stone because we know astrology is not an exact science, but it is based in science, okay? And we are all made of the same stuff that all those stars up in the sky are made with. Sun affects the seasons, doesn't it? Doesn't the moon affect the tides? We're clearly affected by these things. Now, those planets, those focus points that I was showing you, those are the biggest astral bodies in our personal solar system, okay? So, all right, somebody said I'm definitely a star child. Sure. So, having that is interesting. Somebody's asking, is it common to have multiple planets in a house? Yeah, no worries, Brianna. It is, it's fairly common in some ways. Yes, because it's something called a stellium. Okay, that's a group of 3 or more planets in a single house or a single sign, and it will give you that concentration. If it's all in a single sign, but it's spread across a couple of houses, it's 2 different parts of your life, but with the same attitude or the same baseline, okay? And vice versa, if it's one house, it's going to focus on that part of your life. Yeah, I have a first house stellium personally with 6 placements in it. So they happen fairly often. But what do you think about her Jupiter moon conjunction? I think that it shows that her emotions can help her to expand, which obviously they do, and her transformation of emotions, because it is in the 8th house. Yes, 6, actually technically 5, because the ascendant is always in the first house. But yeah, I have 4 Sagittarius placements and 2 Capricorn placements, and they're all in the first house. So yeah. But another thing I want to talk about, actually, let me go back to her chart for a second so I can show you on a chart. And actually, I can zoom into this part right here, I think. Yeah. So this is her chart up close, just this bottom left part here. So I can show you something. So in astrology, we have the sun, right? And this represents the season that you were born in. All right. So you can see that she was born in Sagittarius season, which is December November and December, probably later because she's further along, like about halfway would be when it goes into December. Okay. So like literally this is how the science works. So we can see that she was born in later December as a Sagittarius. We can also see that she was born almost at 6 a.m. just by looking at this. Okay. Because 6 a.m. usually starts the season of the sign rising is at 6 a.m. Okay. So between 6 and 8, if you're born between 6 and 8 a.m., whatever your sun sign is probably also your rising sign. Okay. In my case, similar to Taylor, I have a Sag rising, but a Capricorn sun. Okay. So that's what that can indicate. Now, other things we talk about in astrology, we are earth centered. Okay. When in actuality, we are sun centered. But in astrology, we're earth centered. So since we're in the middle, between us and the sun are 2 placements. Okay. So because of that, because we're the earth, which I usually associate with your ascendant, but basically you can say, here's the earth in the middle, right? Because that's what we're talking about. And this is how the constellations move. And these are how the other planets and astral bodies move, luminaries, all that. So what's interesting is because between the earth and the sun, we have not very many degrees, but 2 placements. One happens to be Mercury and the other happens to be Venus. Okay. So Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. Within every single person's birth chart, it can never be more than 28 degrees from the sun. Remember, the signs are only 30 degrees. What does that mean? It means that if you have a Sagittarius sun, you can only have Mercury in Scorpio, Sagittarius, or Capricorn. That's it. It is not possible for you to have a Mercury in any of those other things, okay? Now, that being said, the same thing goes for Venus with one exception, and that is Venus can't be more than 47 degrees away from the sun, which means 2 signs away. So if you were a Sagittarius sun, you could not have it in anything, you couldn't have your Venus in anything other than Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, or Aquarius. Okay. So I hope that helps you like see that. That's pretty cool. There's other things like when we're talking about oppositions. Let me show you something. As an example, if this were the sun right here, if this were right here, okay, and we saw this opposition line, chances are that person would have been born on a full moon, okay? Now, when we see it like this, like say this was the sun and the moon, or the sun and the moon, and they were right here together, chances are they were born on a new moon. And as they progress around the chart, we can tell which phase of the moon people were born on just by looking at it. I mean, if I had it all memorized. I don't quite have all that memorized yet. Hold on, let me see. The Venus rule is really cool. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, those are some interesting things. Make sure you check out my content because I have a lot of stuff on like what's the most common Earth or sun signs and moon signs and all sorts of stuff. The content I create is research based and as close to scientifically true as I can get without including a gender binary to it. Also, not including a monogamous thing to it. Meaning, I feel like we have more than one soulmate out there. There's lots of other connections. Those of us who may be poly or ethically non-monogamous or don't want to settle down, you also can be into astrology. So I like that. I thought you knew a lot. And I just learned so much. I thought I knew a lot and I just learned so much. Oh, excellent. Thank you. You are fantastic. Thank you so much. Y'all are sweet. Are there any traits for early Venus versus late Venus for sun signs? No, not really. It depends. I mean, it can, but it usually just depends on the interactions of what signs they happen to be in. Are there traits the way the 12th house is always used as a negative trait. Thank you for the information you're providing. Yes, the 12th house is often used as a negative trait, but I don't think of that at all. Sometimes people talk about it being your hidden enemies and things like that. And that could be the case, but it's also about your intuition and dreams. So it's a lot of self-battling and a lot of informative battling of yourself. It's instead of having new and naive outlook on yourself, it's a more understood idea of the self. That's how I feel anyway. Meaning if you have Cancer Sun but a Taurus Venus, like if, in other words, if like a Taurus Sun and, or I mean, I'm sorry, you said a Taurus Venus versus a Cancer Sun. Is that what you were saying? So in other words, it's on the other side. It probably indicates that it was retrograde. Okay. Now, when it comes to retrograde, folks, it's not really a big thing. I do have videos on it so you can see what they indicate. In fact, I've noticed sometimes people feel better during certain retrogrades. It could be because your planet is retrograded in your chart. It's extremely rare for somebody to not have a retrograde planet. Okay. Like maybe 9% of the world has a chart that doesn't have their major ones with one in retrograde, because about 80% of the time there's at least one planet in retrograde. And really it doesn't mean that it's going backwards. It means it's getting lapped by the other planets. That's what it means, if that helps. Yeah. You're talking about it being morning star versus evening star. Not really, but sorry, this is a theory is just super neat to learn about. Thank you. Sure. You're the first astro content creator that explained the aspects in a way I understand. Thank you. You are very welcome. I pride myself in that because I am coming from a place where I didn't necessarily, I have always been a fan of astrology and always been interested in it, but I really wanted to learn what made it tick. And because I used to do marketing for like architecture and engineering firms, I had this innate ability as a graphic designer as well to take complicated information and visually pare it down and explain it to folks so that it's easier to understand. So I hope that that has helped. Yeah. And yes, because it's hard to explain, but if you can give folks the information of how to explain aspects, meaning like those focus points have a certain focus, call them by their nickname of the focus, and then you give the aspect its own energy word, it really helps, to kind of understand how they're connecting. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that. I hope all of you enjoyed, this reading on Taylor. I know that she's awfully busy right now, so I could not get her to come and pop in to talk with us. What about Lilith? I'm assuming you're talking about Black Moon Lilith. There are 4 different Liliths in astrology. Make sure you check out my video on that. Most common talked about is Black Moon Lilith. And that's kind of like the rebellion, if you will. I can tell you what hers is in if you would like to know, because I can turn it on and see. Okay. It's in Scorpio in the 11th house. It's right here. Scorpio 11th house. So socially speaking, she's quite the rebel. And yet an emotional investigator. So pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So yeah, if nobody has any other questions or anything about Taylor's chart or anything along those lines, I'm going to head out of here. Please make sure that you check on... There you go. Make sure that you all check to see Lilith first house Capricorn. Yeah, I mean, so your rebellion is within yourself and it has to do with the work ethic that you have, which is interesting. Lilith was Adam's first wife. She was too rebellious, So that's where that comes from, folks. Listen, there's so much info, and I am thinking about putting up a class. I haven't done one in a while where we'll learn how to read these birth charts. So make sure you like this or subscribe or follow me or whatever so you can be notified for any classes that may be upcoming or any celebrity readings. Sometimes I actually have celebrities on and I read their chart. Like I said, Taylor's on tour right now, crazy busy. So I did not even bother to try to ask her to come on. But hey, maybe we can get her to come on after tour calms down a little bit. But yeah, make sure you go check out all my stuff with Queer Ultimatum. If you haven't seen my reading with Margaret Cho or Theo Germain or any of those other celebrities out there, Go check those out. And if you want a reading from me yourself, there is a link in my bio. Make sure you go to that. There's a bunch of different services that you can get on there. Also, go check out my new affiliate, Dapper Boy. For anybody who is in the realm of like, what kind of clothes do I want to buy? Men's, women's, I don't know. Dapper Boy is for you. I used to get that gap, you know what I'm talking about, in the back, because even though I'm masculine of center, I like to wear men's clothes, but then it gives me the gap because I have a booty and a smaller waist. But these pants, these jeans they sent me were so nice. Anyway, go check it out and use Queerstrology 15 to get 15% off, which is a bonus. Yeah, check out my shop on here. There's a bunch of stuff from different places that I love their stuff. You've always had the major, yeah, exactly, right? So they sent me stuff to try, and when I tried it on, I was like, this is amazing. Not to mention the fabric is nice. You know how you'll get something and you're like, oh, this is like really thin, and like I feel like people can see through it, and I have to wear a bra even if I don't want to wear a bra. Not the case with these because they're nice and thick. I love it. So, and they just got their new t-shirt packs in, so go check that out too. Love their stuff, like love it. I do not do affiliate programs to things I do not believe in and do not try personally. So make sure you go check that out. All right. Lily says, your energy is so lovely and fun. Thank you for all of the info. Lily, thank you. And that's very kind of you. And look, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of you folks. So I really, really appreciate it. And if any of you are interested in reading, check it out. If you have any questions or anything, make sure you drop a comment on one of the videos and ask away. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here. I love you. And again, take care of each other. All right. Cheers.